It was a bright afternoon. Sunlight touched the windows of the city's most expensive restaurant, La Grande Table. Inside, everything was shining. Marble floors, golden lights, and waiters in black suits. Rich people came here to show their power. Celebrities, business leaders, even foreign guests. Everyone wanted to be seen here. At 12:05 p.m., the glass door opened gently. A woman walked in. She wore a plain cotton kurta and simple sandals. No makeup, no jewelry. Her black hair was tied back in a loose bun. She looked like someone from an average neighborhood. Her name was Aaliyah. She walked slowly with calm eyes and a soft smile. But the moment she entered, the mood of the staff changed. One waiter looked at another and smirked. A hostess raised her eyebrows and whispered, "Lost, maybe." Behind the counter, the manager leaned toward a server and said, "She can't even afford water here." They all laughed quietly. Aaliyah heard it. She heard everything. But she didn't say a word. She looked around, searching for a place to sit. The hostess walked up, but not with kindness. "Yes," she asked in a fake polite voice. "Can I help you?" "I'd like a table for one," Aaliyah said gently. The hostess glanced her up and down, then forced a smile. "Of course, this way." But she didn't take Aaliyah to the main hall where the large windows showed the garden. No, she took her to the back, next to the kitchen doors. The chair was wobbly. The table was dirty. "Here you go," the hostess said quickly. "Your server will be with you shortly." Then she walked away without looking back. Aaliyah sat quietly. Other customers were being served fresh bread, glasses of cold water, and warm smiles. But no one came to Aaliyah. 10 minutes passed. She looked around. Waiters walked past her again and again, avoiding her table like it didn't exist. She raised her hand politely once. No response. She cleared her throat. Still nothing. At one table nearby, a man whispered to his wife, "Why is she even here?" The woman giggled and said, "Maybe she's trying to feel rich." Another guest laughed and said, "Watch her order one glass of water and sit here for hours." Aaliyah still didn't react. She simply sat with her back straight, her eyes slowly observing every face. She saw which waiters were rude. She saw which manager gave silent orders. She noticed who was mocking, and who just stood by in silence. Every second, she remembered it all. Suddenly, the manager walked by and stopped near her table. He didn't even smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with forced politeness. "This section is about to be cleaned. We will need you to move." Aaliyah looked up at him. "Can I sit in the main hall instead?" she asked. The manager smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "I'm sorry, but those tables are already booked. Maybe next time." She nodded slowly. She stood up. Her chair made a small noise. She walked toward the door again. The staff relaxed, thinking, "She's leaving." But then, Aaliyah stopped. She looked at her watch. It had been exactly 5 minutes since the manager asked her to move. She turned around slowly. Everyone noticed. She took a deep breath and spoke in a calm voice. Her words were simple, but something in her tone made the room go still. "I came here today, not for the food, not for the place. I came here to observe." The hostess looked confused. The manager raised an eyebrow. Aaliyah continued, "In these 5 minutes, I learned more than I expected. Now everyone in the restaurant was watching her. I saw how you treat people who don't look rich, how you ignore, how you laugh, how you decide who deserves kindness." The manager stepped forward, pretending to fix the situation. "Ma'am, we're sorry if there was." She raised her hand slightly. He stopped speaking. "I don't want your sorry," she said quietly. Then she looked straight into his eyes. "I want your time to be up." She checked her watch again. "Right about now." Just then, the sound of 3 black cars pulling up outside broke the silence. Doors slammed. Men in suits and two women with ID cards entered quickly. They were not customers. They were from headquarters. The staff began to whisper. The color left the manager's face. Aaliyah looked around once more. 5 minutes ago, they laughed at her. Now, not a single person could meet her eyes. She stepped aside and let the visitors in. Then she smiled softly and said just 5 chilling words. "You disrespected the wrong woman." And with that, she walked calmly to the front window, watching the world outside. The storm had arrived, and it was dressed in simple clothes. 5 minutes ago, Aaliyah had been ignored, laughed at, and treated like she didn't belong. Now the staff watched in shock as men and women in black suits walked into the restaurant. They weren't ordinary customers. They were serious people, holding clipboards, cameras, and ID cards from the head office. No one knew what was happening. But Aaliyah did. She stood near the window quietly, not saying a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes were calm, but sharp, like someone who had waited for this moment for a long time. The restaurant manager, Mr. Rogul, walked up to the suited man who looked like the leader. "Is there a problem?" he asked nervously. The man didn't answer him. He simply looked at Aaliyah, then back at his team. "Start the process," he said firmly. 2 people began reviewing the CCTV footage. One woman started talking to the customers sitting nearby. Another man took notes while pointing toward the kitchen and entrance. The restaurant staff was confused. "What process?" one of the waiters whispered. "Why are they watching footage?" asked another. Then it hit them. Something was wrong. Seriously wrong. And it all began when that woman walked in. The same woman they mocked just minutes ago. The same woman they pushed to the back corner of the restaurant. The same woman they refused to serve. Suddenly, everyone turned to look at her. Who was she? Flashback. 1 week earlier, 7 days ago, in a tall glass building in another part of the city, a large meeting was held at the headquarters of La Grande Table Restaurants. It was a big day. The founder of the company, Mr. Samir Khan, was stepping down. He had built the business with love and hard work, but now it was time to retire. He stood in the middle of the room and made an announcement. "I am leaving this company in the hands of someone I trust with my life. She is smart, kind, and sees people for who they are, not for how they look." Then he smiled and pointed to the side. A woman stepped forward. It was Aaliyah. Gasps filled the room. No one had expected it. Many had never seen her before. "She's my daughter," Samir said proudly, "and your new chief ethics officer." Her job? To go into every restaurant across the country, secretly, and watch how staff treated customers. Not just rich customers, every customer. And if she found disrespect, unfair behavior, or cruelty, she had the full power to shut it all down. Back to present day. The manager, Mr. Rahul, now began to sweat. He had worked in this restaurant for 6 years. He thought he knew all the rules. But he didn't know that the woman he pushed into the corner seat was now his boss. He walked toward Aaliyah, trying to smile. "Ma'am, if we had known who you were." Aaliyah finally turned to him, her voice soft but strong. "That's the problem. You think respect is only for people you know or people who look rich." Mr. Rogul stammered. We didn't mean any harm." Aaliyah raised her eyebrows. "No water, no greeting, a dirty table next to the kitchen, and when I asked for a better seat, you asked me to leave." The manager had no answer. She stepped closer and said, "What if I had been a poor mother bringing her child here for a special day? What if I had saved money for weeks for one nice lunch?" Tears filled the eyes of one waiter. He looked down in shame. "You didn't just fail me," she said. "You failed the very heart of hospitality." The real test. Outside, more vehicles were arriving. Journalists. Cameras. Someone had tipped off the media. News was spreading fast. A secret inspection exposed cruelty in a luxury restaurant. Aaliyah didn't care about fame. She cared about justice. She walked to the center of the restaurant and looked around. "All staff, please gather," she said. Everyone stood silently. One by one, she pointed to those who had laughed, mocked, and ignored. "You're done," she said simply. To a few who stood frozen in the corner but had not taken part in the cruelty, she said, "You stayed silent. That's not enough, but you'll get a second chance, with training. Earn it." And then she looked at one young busboy. He was the only one who had tried to clean her table before being stopped by the manager. "You," she said gently. "What's your name?" "Ravi," the boy said, eyes wide. "You'll be promoted. Starting tomorrow, you'll train with the service team." His mouth dropped open. "Me? But I'm just." "You're kind," Aliyah said. "And that's enough to build a leader. The real power." That day, Aliyah didn't raise her voice. She didn't call for revenge. She simply reminded everyone of something they had forgotten. Respect is not about money. Respect is not about clothes. It's about how we treat people when we think no one is watching. And this time, someone was watching. The news of what happened at La Grande table spread quickly. By the end of the day, videos were online. People were shocked. Some cheered. Some were angry. But one thing was clear. The woman in simple clothes was not so simple after all. Aliyah, the new chief ethics officer, had exposed the truth without raising her voice. She didn't argue. She didn't insult. She just watched, and then acted. But that night, as Aliyah sat alone in her quiet apartment, her phone rang. She picked it up. The number was private. She answered. A deep voice spoke on the other end. "You made a lot of noise today." Aliyah didn't recognize the voice. "Who is this?" she asked calmly. "I'm someone from the board," the voice replied. "And we don't like the way you're doing things." There was silence. Then the voice continued. "You embarrassed a top location. You fired experienced people. You brought cameras into our business. That's not how we work here." Aliyah closed her eyes and listened. Then she asked one simple question. "Did I lie?" The voice paused. "No," he admitted, "but your truth is dangerous." She smiled. "Then maybe this company needs danger," she said softly. The call ended. But something had changed. The fight had begun. The boardroom meeting. The next morning, Aliyah was called into a board meeting. The company's top directors were already seated. Men in suits, women with sharp eyes. They all looked at her like she was a problem. The chairman cleared his throat. "Miss Aliyah, your actions yesterday caused quite a stir." "I know," she replied calmly. "You dismissed several staff members. You allowed media to enter. Do you understand the damage you've done to our image?" Aliyah looked around the room. "Do you understand the damage they did to our values?" Silence. She opened her bag and took out a file. It was thick. She placed it on the table. "What is this?" someone asked. "Reports from customers," she replied. "Over 700 complaints from the last 12 months." She opened the file and read one. "I wore a simple sari. They treated me like dirt." Another. "The waiter rolled his eyes when I asked for a glass of water." Another. "They only smiled when I showed my gold watch." Aliyah looked up. These are real voices, ignored, forgotten, buried under 5-star ratings. The board looked uncomfortable. The chairman finally said, "But the customers keep coming." Aliyah leaned forward. "Do they come, or do they survive?" The surprise backup. Just as the meeting grew tense, the door opened. An older man stepped in. It was Samir Khan, the founder, Aliyah's father. He hadn't been seen in public since his retirement. The board was shocked. "Sir, this is a private meeting," someone said. Samir raised his hand. "My company is built on honesty and heart," he said. "If you forget that, you forget me." He looked at Aliyah with pride. "She did exactly what I hired her to do." One board member spoke nervously. But sir, she's changing everything. Samir nodded. Yes, and that's why she will now lead more than ethics. Everyone turned to Alia. Starting today, he said, Alia is also head of customer experience. She will visit every branch. The room went silent. Some were shocked. Some were angry. But none could stop it. The decision was final. The storm is coming. Later that evening, Alia stood on the roof of the building, looking over the city lights. She knew more storms would come. More resistance. More people in power who didn't want change. But she wasn't afraid. She didn't need loud words. She didn't need gold jewelry. She had something far stronger. Truth. And she had a plan. The next day, she would visit another restaurant, and another after that. Not as a boss, but as a simple woman in simple clothes. Because when people think you're weak, they show you who they really are. And that's when real justice begins. 2 days after the restaurant scandal, Alia was already moving to her next stop. This time, it was in the heart of the city, La Grande Table. Premium branch. The restaurant was famous for its high prices, celebrity guests, and perfect reviews. But behind the curtains, something else was hiding. And Alia was going to find out. She didn't call ahead. She didn't bring cameras. She didn't dress like a CEO. Just the same quiet look, simple clothes, soft eyes, and a small purse. She walked in and was greeted by loud music and expensive perfume in the air. Waiters rushed past her without a glance. The hostess, busy on her phone, didn't look up. Alia waited and waited. No one came. Finally, she walked to the reception and softly said, "Excuse me, I'd like a table for one." The hostess looked up and frowned. She gave Alia a quick look from head to toe. No bookings without a card. "I'm a walk-in," Alia said gently. The hostess rolled her eyes and called the manager. "Enter the manager, Mr. Diraj." Mr. Diraj arrived with too much perfume and a fake smile. He was tall, wore shiny shoes, and talked like he was more important than the food. He looked at Alia and frowned. "No offense," he said loudly, "but this place is not for everyone." A few guests turned to look. Alia stayed calm. "Is there a policy against walk-ins?" "No," he replied, "but we expect a certain standard." Alia understood what he meant. Standard was his way of saying, "You don't look rich enough to be here." "Still," she smiled, "I'd like to dine here. Is that okay?" He laughed a little. "Look, I have a lot of guests to manage. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the cafe down the street." Alia didn't move. She simply said, "Table for one, please." The manager sighed and waved a hand. "Fine, but don't expect fast service. The real test begins." Alia was taken to a small, dark corner table near the kitchen door. It smelled like oil and old food. No menu was given. No water. She sat there for 22 minutes, watching, listening. Waiters smiled at rich-looking guests. They offered suggestions, poured wine, bowed deeply. But for her, nothing. The manager passed by 3 times. Never once did he make eye contact. He had already decided she was not valuable. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea she owned the report that would decide his future. The waiter with a heart. As she sat in the corner, someone finally came to her table. A young waiter named Arav. He looked nervous. He held a glass of water and said, "I'm sorry for the delay, ma'am. I'll take your order now." She smiled. "Thank you." He lowered his voice. "I wanted to serve you earlier, but the manager told me not to." Alia looked at him carefully. "Why did you come anyway?" He looked down. "Because it didn't feel right," he whispered. "You're a guest. That should be enough." She nodded. "What's your name?" she asked. "Arav," he said. She smiled again. "Thank you, Arav. You did the right thing." The revelation. An hour later, Alia stood up to leave. The manager walked by again. "No complaints, I hope," he said with a smirk. Alia looked at him calmly. "Actually," she said, "you'll be hearing from the ethics office soon." The smirk disappeared. He laughed awkwardly. "You know someone there." Alia reached into her purse and pulled out a card. She placed it on the table and walked out. The manager picked up the card slowly. His face turned white. It read, "Alia Khan, Chief Ethics and Customer Experience Officer, La Grande Table Group." He dropped the card. His voice shook. She was here. The young waiter, Arav, smiled quietly from behind the bar. The fallout. The next day, the board received Alia's report. Video footage, staff interviews, customer stories. It was clear Mr. Dirage had turned the restaurant into a place of judgment, not joy. Alia made her decision. He was removed from his position. But she didn't stop there. She sent a full team to retrain every staff member. And she promoted Arav, making him guest experience supervisor. He couldn't believe it. "But I'm just a waiter," he said. Alia replied, "You're more than that. You cared when no one else did. That's what leadership looks like." The message. The restaurant changed after that. Guests of all kinds were welcomed with warmth. The staff learned something powerful. You never know who's sitting at your table. So treat everyone like they matter, because they do. And Alia, she was already planning her next visit. Quietly, silently. Because respect isn't about who you see. It's about how you treat those you think don't matter. The next restaurant was in the hills, a beautiful place with glass walls, a garden view, and the soft sound of waterfalls. It was known as Sky Pedals, a branch of La Grande Table. People called it heaven on earth. But Alia had received a letter, a handwritten one, from a young woman named Nana. She had gone there on her birthday with her father. They weren't rich, but they saved up for that one special lunch. And they were humiliated. "We were treated like we were insects," Nana wrote. "No smiles, no greetings. They laughed when we couldn't pronounce a French word on the menu." The letter ended with, "I didn't cry in front of my father, but I cried all night." Alia folded the letter and put it in her purse. She didn't need cameras. She didn't need headlines. She just needed the truth. And truth, she had learned, often spoke through silence. Arrival at Sky Pedals. The next morning, Alia arrived at Sky Pedals. She wore a simple cotton dress. No makeup, no jewelry, no handbag, just a folded letter in her pocket. The man at the entrance smiled, but not at her. He turned away to greet a couple stepping out of a luxury car. Alia waited and waited. Finally, a hostess came up, ice cold and distant. "Reservation?" she asked. "No," Alia replied. "Then I'm sorry, we're full." Alia peeked inside. Half the tables were empty. She asked politely, "Is there a waiting list?" The hostess sighed. "Look, madam, this place is not a good match for everyone." The ignored guest. Alia finally got a seat. After a long wait, they gave her a table near the exit. People passed by her with bags, bumping into her chair. Still, she said nothing. A waiter came after 15 minutes, chewing gum. He didn't look her in the eye. He placed the menu with a thud. "Cheapest dish is 1,400 rupees, he said bluntly. Alia simply smiled. "Thank you." He raised an eyebrow and walked away. She didn't react. She didn't complain. She just watched. Every rude glance, every fake smile toward richer customers, every moment of fake politeness that vanished when guests looked ordinary. The whisper behind her back. 2 servers were standing near the kitchen. They didn't realize Alia could hear them. One laughed. "I think she's here just to take pictures and show her friends." The other said, "She's definitely not from the city. Look at her dress." Alia kept sipping her water. Every word was a seed of truth she needed to hear. This was what the company didn't see in reports. But she did. In silence. An unexpected ally. Suddenly, a girl from the cleaning staff walked by and stopped. She looked at Alia, unsure. Then, softly, she said, "You look tired. Can I bring you tea?" On me. Alia was surprised. She smiled. "What's your name?" "I'm Farzana," she said. "I'm nobody, really. I just clean." Alia replied, "You're not nobody." Farzana nodded shyly and walked away. She returned with a fresh cup of warm chai. No bill, just kindness. That one act spoke louder than the entire service team. The final move. Before leaving, Alia walked up to the manager. He looked irritated. Yes. She pulled the folded letter from her pocket and placed it on the counter. "You failed her," she said softly. "Who?" he asked. She didn't answer. She turned and left. The manager opened the letter and read the words. "I didn't cry in front of my father, but I cried all night." His face froze. He rushed outside to call her back, but she was already gone. The aftershock. 2 days later, the head office received a formal report from Alia. She didn't ask for staff to be fired. She asked for a deeper change. She recommended a surprise audit of every luxury branch. Mystery guests would visit in simple clothes, just like she did. And then came the most powerful part of her report. Rudeness has many uniforms. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it holds a wine list. But the heart always shows in silence. The board read her words carefully. They couldn't deny what she had seen. Her silence had said what no angry voice ever could. The new rule. 1 week later, a new company-wide order was issued. Every guest is to be treated with full respect, regardless of appearance, background, or clothes. Any failure will lead to retraining or removal. The staff at Sky Petals was shocked. Some were scared. Farzana, the cleaner, was invited to meet Alia. She had tears in her eyes. "I just gave you tea," she whispered. Alia smiled. "And you gave me something more powerful than a meal. You gave me humanity." Farzana was promoted to staff wellness officer, tasked with teaching others how to treat guests with dignity. The girl who just cleaned became a light in the dark. It was a quiet Monday morning. Sky was cloudy. The streets were half empty. But inside Crimson Fork, one of the top-rated restaurants of La Grande Table, everything was ready. Tables were set with crystal glasses. White roses stood tall in silver vases. The staff looked perfect. Smiling, polished, polite. But only when the camera was on. Behind closed doors, something else lived here. Fear, fake smiles, and silent cruelty. They had no idea today was the day it would all come crashing down. Because today, the CEO herself was coming. And she wasn't coming in a suit. She wasn't bringing a security team. She wasn't arriving in a fancy car. She came alone. She walked in like a nobody. Alia stepped through the glass doors in her usual quiet way. A loose gray kurta. Simple shoes. No jewelry. No makeup. The hostess didn't smile. Instead, she sighed and said, "We're fully booked." Alia looked around. The place was half empty. "Still," she said, "that's okay. I'll wait." The hostess gave her a tired look. "We don't allow waiting at the door. Please step aside." Alia didn't argue. She just stepped back, took a seat on a bench, and waited. She watched every movement. A waiter walked past and whispered, "Wrong place for bargain hunters." Someone laughed. The manager looked at her from his glass office, frowned, and walked away. The disrespect gets bolder. After 15 minutes, a server came. "Table for one," he asked with a fake smile. Alia nodded. He took her to the back, next to the washroom. The worst seat in the place. Still, she sat quietly. She didn't touch her phone. She didn't complain. She was here for something bigger. The menu arrived late. When she asked about a dish, the waiter answered with a bored tone. "I don't know, ma'am. You can try something cheaper. It's safer." They didn't know who she was. As Aliyah waited for her food, two young staff members stood behind a curtain, whispering. "She's been here 30 minutes, one said. "Should we tell the manager?" "About what?" The other laughed. "She's just another walk-in. Probably came to take pictures." "She looks poor," said the first. Aliyah heard it all. Every word landed like a stone in the water, creating ripples inside her. But her face remained calm. This was not new. She had seen it in 4 restaurants already. But this time was different. Because she was not just a guest. She was the owner. The CEO card is dropped. A few minutes later, the regional supervisor entered the restaurant. He looked nervous. He walked straight to Aliyah, eyes wide. "Mom," he asked, voice shaking. The waiter behind her dropped his tray. The hostess ran toward them, face pale. Aliyah slowly stood up and pulled a small card from her purse. She placed it on the table. The manager ran out of his office, breathless. "Is this a joke?" he asked. The card read, "Aliyah Khan, Chief Executive Officer, La Grande Table Group." Silence. Total silence. All the fake smiles disappeared. All the arrogance turned into fear. Aliyah looked around. "This is how you treat your guests?" she asked quietly. No one spoke. She walked to the kitchen. Chefs stood still. "Do you know," she said calmly, "your waiter just suggested I eat something cheaper because I look poor." Eyes dropped. Hearts raced. The cleanup begins. By the end of the day, 4 employees were suspended. The manager was removed. A full investigation was launched. And Aliyah wasn't done. She called a meeting with the entire staff. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't give a long speech. She just said one thing. "If respect is only given to the rich, this company will fail." Then she turned to leave. But a young intern stood up. She was nervous, shaking. "Mom, I joined this company because I believed in what it stood for. But I see 2 sides now. One for the cameras, and one for the real people." Aliyah paused. She walked over and said, "Then let's build a 3rd side. One that's real, kind, and fair." The rules were rewritten. Within days, all La Grande table staff had to go through a new training. It wasn't about how to pour wine or how to fold napkins. It was about respect, about seeing people without labels, no matter what they wore, no matter what they ordered. Aliyah's personal inspection system became company policy, and mystery guests began visiting every branch, just like she had. Those who treated guests poorly were removed. Those who showed heart were promoted. A new standard was born. The news spread. "She tests restaurants herself," people whispered. "She walks in alone and watches in silence." And suddenly, staff everywhere became alert. Not out of fear, but out of hope. Hope that the next guest, no matter how they looked, could be someone important. Because now, everyone was important. And Aliyah, she didn't want revenge. She wanted change. And in silence, she had created a storm. People thought they knew who Aliyah was. A kind CEO. A quiet woman. Someone who turned a cold company into a warm one. But that was just the surface. There was a deeper truth behind her calm eyes. A story no one knew. Not even the board of directors. Not even her closest staff. It was time the world learned the real reason she did what she did. A video message left behind. It all started with a video. One day, an intern named Ishan was organizing old files. He found a USB drive in a small black envelope. No label. Just one word written in soft ink. "Share if I'm gone." Curious, he plugged it in. A single video played. Aliyah sat on a bench, in her simple gray clothes, smiling gently. "Hello," she said. "If you're watching this, I'm no longer leading the company. Ishan's eyes widened. His hands began to shake. She continued, "There's something I never told anyone. I didn't start this company to become rich. I started it because once someone made my mother cry in front of me in a restaurant, a memory that burned forever." Elia was only 10 years old at the time. She had gone to a small cafe with her mother. They had saved for weeks to enjoy one nice meal together. Her mother wore her best clothes, still simple but clean and full of pride. But when they entered the cafe, the waiter laughed. The cashier looked them up and down. One man behind the counter whispered, "Wrong place." They were asked to leave, told all tables were reserved. They weren't. As they walked out, her mother tried to smile, but Alia saw the tears. "One day, I'll buy it." That night, Alia said something that surprised her mother. She said, "One day, I'll buy that cafe. But I won't fire them. I'll teach them what you taught me. Kindness in the face of cruelty." Her mother laughed softly, not knowing those words would one day shape the world. Years passed. Alia studied hard. She built her business. She rose, fell, and rose again. And one day, she bought that very cafe. She walked in quietly. No cameras, no pride. She sat at the same table they were denied. She closed her eyes and whispered, "For you, Mama," the real meaning of her visits. The video went on. "I visit restaurants not to test the food," she said. "I go to test the hearts." She explained how many times she sat quietly, dressed simply, to see who would judge her by her clothes and who would see her as a person. And every time someone showed cruelty, she didn't get angry. She just made a note and acted later. The people who got a second chance. Then she told a story no one expected. The waiter who laughed at her mother. He had become old, poor. One day, he applied for a job in the kitchen of her chain, without knowing who owned it. Alia saw the application. She hired him, and treated him with full respect. When he finally recognized her, he dropped to his knees and cried. But Alia lifted him up and said, "This is not revenge. This is the lesson I wanted you to learn. Everyone deserves dignity." Her last message. As the video ended, Elia looked into the camera, her eyes full of peace, her voice gentle. "If I'm no longer around, let this message stay. Because buildings fall, fame fades, but how we treat people, that becomes our real story." She smiled, nodded once, and the screen faded to black. The whole company stood still. When the video was shown to the staff and board, no one spoke. Some cried. Even the harshest leaders sat in silence. They finally understood. Alia didn't change the company to grow profits. She changed it to heal an old wound and to stop others from feeling that pain. She never bragged, never told this story publicly. Because real strength doesn't need a spotlight. The cafe turned museum. A year later, that first cafe, the one where her mother was shamed, was turned into a small public space. Not a business, but a place of learning. People from all over came to see. The table her mother sat at. The first dress Alia wore on a surprise visit. The stained letter from Nana. And the original video message she left. On the wall, in bold letters, was a quote from Alia. "Power means nothing unless you use it to lift others." Final narration for your video. She was disrespected, ignored, mocked. But she chose silence over anger. She chose action over revenge. And in doing so, Alia didn't just change a company. She changed lives. Because sometimes, the quietest ones carry the loudest truths.